Today, I'm going to show you one method of making a brooch back. There are several different ways that you can do this. If you Google handmade brooch back, you can see lots of different options. But this is one that doesn't involve any heat. So it might be good if you're working from home and maybe don't have a torch or don't have a big torch. So here I've got my pieces. I've already cut out my top piece and I've cut out my back piece. See that? But I left the template on there because with this method, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut little tabs out of the back and raise them up. And I want that to be hidden by the design. So I need to put those tabs behind the sheep's head. And then the same thing with the claw that kind of holds the bottom of the brooch back in. I'm going to put that down here behind his feet because I don't want the voids left by raising the material to show in the final design. At least not from the front. You'll be able to see it from the back. So I've left my template on here because that shows me exactly where little dude's face is. The first thing I'm going to do is take my ruler and I'm going to try and line it up as straight as I can in the area where I'm going to be putting these tabs. So it doesn't have to be exact, but the closer you can get it to completely straight and not like tilted down or up, the better off you're going to be later. Okay, so it looks like I've got a little less than 30 millimeters to work with. It's completely up to you how far apart you put these tabs. The further apart they are, the more tension your brooch back will have on it. So first you gotta make sure you have enough room for where the tabs are eventually gonna be, and you want to choose the spot where your wire for your brooch back is going to go through. So I'm going to mark, it'll be hard to see because it's black and I'm writing with a black Sharpie, but I'll be able to see. So I'm going to put a dot here at, I guess that's the 15 and one at 35. And then I need to mark where they're going to raise up. So I'm just going to give them a 2 millimeter. And the way I'm getting that is I'm also kind of gauging down here because this is where the claws are going to be. So the claws, I'm just going to follow the shape of this foot. So the claws are going to be roughly, what is that? Half a centimeter apart. And so my top needs to be more than that. If it's not, then it won't function properly. So you see, I originally had these marks here, but I didn't feel like they were far enough apart. All right, so now I'm going to just freehand. If you were a computer person, you could pretty easily incorporate this into your actual design, but I wanted you to see how I came up with it. Okay. So that's what we've got. I can tell looking at it that they're not straight. This one's higher than that one. So I'm going to try and fix that. This is definitely not the most scientific way to do this. And that's where doing it on the computer would help a lot. Okay, so that looks a little bit better. Now I'm going to drill the holes for the wire. And I'm going to drill tiny little holes here for me to pierce out these tabs and the holes down here for me to pierce out. I guess I don't need those holes because I can cut in from the side for the claws. I will determine the bigger hole by knowing what size wire I'm ultimately going to use for my brooch back. I'm going to be using 18 gauge wire. So I'm going to go with a size 55 drill bit. I've done my 2 holes there, and so I'm now going to drill little holes just to get my saw blade through for the tabs. Now Next, I'm going to thread my saw blade through one of my starter holes, design up so I can see what I'm doing. And I'm going to follow that tab shape around. Okay, there's one. Now I do the other. I did end up doing 2 holes on this side because the first one was very uneven, and then it turned out the second one was as well. So, oh well. And then I also need to cut in my claws. Now, if your design is not set up like mine where the claws are going at the very bottom, because it definitely does not have to, the claws could be up here if my design was more suited for it, you would do the same thing. You would just drill 2 holes, and you would not drill a main hole. You just drill 2 tiny holes and cut another set of tab shapes. But I have them already incorporated. So I'm just going to stop where I marked. Go. Okay. Now I can pull my template off. And, oh, before I do that, let me just show you. So this design is not exactly symmetrical. So I'm going to make sure that I keep this side up because that does perfectly correspond here. But if I flip it over, it may not. So I'm going to keep this side as the top side. And I'm actually going to write that on here because I will forget. Once the tabs are bent back, you can't forget. But right now, when it's all flat, it would be pretty easy to forget. Okay, so at this point, I need to bend these tabs forward, and then I can have some fun with this negative shape if I want to, and I might, we'll see. So that's how it'll look. Okay, so I take my pliers. I usually use my chain nose pliers for this. Flat nose would work. I like the chain nose just because they come to more of a fine tip. And you see I've got my bench pin here. I'm just going to put this where the tab is over the center part of the bench pin, push it up to the top, and fold it, begin to fold it down. From the other side, I can actually use my pliers to make it straighter. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. If my claws were like this, I would do this as well. But since mine are at the end, I can actually just roll them up with my round nose pliers in a second. So I'm going to flip to the other side. And now I'm going to place my pliers right at that base and squeeze to get more of a straight up orientation. All right, so there they are. And then let me roll up my claws. So for that, you need your round nose pliers. Now remember, with your round nose pliers, you are not pinching. You're keeping them apart and using them as kind of a mandrel. Okay, so we come up here and we get close to the tip, but again, we're not pinching. We just fold it over. So we have a nice little claw trap there. We do the same thing right over here. So I start not quite all the way to the tip, And then I move to the very tip, being careful not to squeeze because that will do that. It will deform the metal. Okay, and then I check them this way for evenness, and then if they're not quite even, I can kind of squeeze down a little bit. Okay. All right, so this is now the back, and I can come look and see. All right, see, it's still hidden by my design. And if you turn it over, you can see what you will see from the other side. So at this point, I can file these tabs. I can file this void because it all needs to be smooth. If it's not smooth, it's going to catch on fabric because this is meant to wear on your shirt, and it's going to catch and pull and ruin somebody's shirt. I want to have a little fun though, so like now that these are up, I can do whatever I want with this negative space here. I don't have to leave it as these kind of tab shapes. And the same thing with my actual tabs. I could file those into triangle, I could notch them, I can do whatever I want. So I'm going to line this back up. And with my Sharpie, I'm just going to remind myself where this design ends so that I don't go past it, because I don't want to see this from the front. Okay. But, I don't know, it might be kind of nice to like mimic that a little bit, you know? Be kind of cute. So, then I would have to come. So like if I remove this, and I remove this and this, that should be pretty good. And it would be just kind of cute, like a little nod. And I could, I have to make sure I keep these connected, but see how much room I have to work with up here. Not a lot, but I could also do a little, you know, little thing right there if I wanted to. And I could kind of bring this one up. As just like a little nod. I think I'm gonna do that. It's an adventure. Okay, there we go. Now I clean it up with the file. I do need to say that while doing this, you need to be conscious of making sure that your brooch components are supported. You don't want to cut off so much material that they become flimsy. I'm not worried about it with this. This is 20 gauge brass, and it does not bend easily. And I've left a pretty good margin here to make sure that they're held on well. But you don't want to get too thin with this, because this is what's gonna take all the wear and tear from it being on somebody's clothing. So it's gonna take some abuse, so you don't want it to be weak.